of a delay, so I'll sort of mill about a little bit at the moment. But we've got 2 people on already. Okay,
so Mrs. Chris and my son.
Probably, yeah. Probably, yeah. Hello, Mrs. Chris. Hello, Karen's on. So there we go. That's pretty good. I'll wait for that to get to 30 seconds. Then I've gone down to 1 person now. So one of them jumped off. Sod this. I'm not watching that. Right, we've got the 30 seconds. Let's assume it's recorded for now. Well, hello, everyone. Whether you are about to be jumping on this live or you're watching the recording back of this. This is tea time, episode 3. But because of the heat, I haven't got tea. You've got your water, I believe, Karen. So I've got my fizzy.
I was going to go for the brew, but it's just too warm.
Look
so
at you.
I've got the water.
Is that Stanley one?
Is it hell? Oh. Have I got 50 odd quid for a Stanley? No. It's a tea move, $6.99.
Bloody hell. Hey, why? I can't mind with that. Right, so we've already got another guitar player. Hello, it's working. And obviously, Ellie Norman there, Mrs. Chris is also I laugh with her as well. Right, so thank you ever so much for jumping on, and also for you as well, Karen. Thank you for jumping on this, my only 3rd ever episode of the particular podcast. Like I said just before you came on here, been warm enough for you recently?
I love the heat. It really doesn't bother me whatsoever. I much prefer this than the grey drizzle rain.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the winter, I mean, I'm not a winter person at all, but I like the bright light days. Even if it's been snowing, as long as it's nice and crisp. So from that point of view, I don't mind the heat at all. But I do hide indoors all day long. So.
See, for creatures like me, and for us who are particularly overweight, this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare because anything I now go to do, I'm like, oh God, just help me out, Lord. And it's the sleeping for me. I mean, we've now got an aircon machine, which thank God that they've been invented. So I had a big tube that goes out the window and it blows out all the hot air and whatnot. But yeah, see, for me, I would like it. I quite like the where it gets dark late. I like all the bright, but it's the humidity, and we don't do heat here. We do muggy. We do humidity in the country, and it's like horrible.
I could do without the humidity. The 30 degree. I mean, I was in Spain only a couple of weeks ago.
I know you were.
And the heat. I think we hit the high 20s while we were out there. It wasn't ridiculous, but high 20s. But it's a completely different heat, and it sounds bonkers. It's just us Brits, isn't it? It's a different heat over here. 28 degrees here is horrible. 28 degrees in Florida is wonderful. But
well, it's dry. It's not the humidity isn't there. We've also got Jo who's jumped on, and she said, "Hi, Jack and Chris. Lovely to see you both. Hi, and hi everybody who's watching." So yes, hello, hi Jo. How you doing? And also, Mrs. Chris has said the cats love the aircon unit too. Well, there we go. That's what it's all for. So.
Exactly.
Right. So
I think Jo, come on, it's Karen, not Jacko.
Yeah, there we go. Right. Okay. So I'm so pleased that I've managed to get you onto this because you was one of the first names I was thinking of as well. Because actually, if I think back to when I started, I think you were one of the first people I subscribed to. Because when I came on, I hadn't actually subscribed to anyone yet. It was a brand new channel. I hadn't been watching everybody. So I thought to myself, well, I kind of want to sort of see who else is doing this and whatnot. And I think yours was one of the first. If I typed in Mounjaro UK and all that, your videos were coming up first. So I think it was good. I'm really pleased to be able to get you on as well. And also because you've got a bit of a different vibe to yours, because obviously you've got the diabetic side of it rather than just the whole sort of the weight loss side of it. You've got so it's a different kind of feel to your one. And I was having a look at your first video back in the days, all about me, or that sort of one. And one of the things that I saw on there and what you said was that actually your first video, that was actually week 14 for you, instead of it being like, this is my week 1 and whatnot. And so just out of curiosity, I don't think it's because I don't think you went into it. I know that you had a lot of process going up to the point of having Mounjaro, but Oh, my mic is a bit crackly, is it? Oh dear. All right, doesn't matter. Why did it take you until week 14 to decide, do you know what, I'm going to do this by video?
It's a difficult one. I've previously had a channel before,
Okay.
and it was around gardening.
Mhm.
So I wasn't completely new to it, but what I did find was that I got burnt out. I did it for about a year, and I was only putting up one video a week, exactly the same as I am now. But I got to a stage when, the anxiety of what am I going to put out next, and I eventually just stopped doing it. So I think I started watching vloggers a year ago now, sort of as I was looking into the process myself. And my son said a couple of times, you're going to vlog your journey. I'm like, oh, I don't know, with the hassle from the last one. So I think that's what put me off at the beginning.
So sort of a bit of a burnt experience, so you was a bit reluctant
Yeah.
to get back into it.
And then, I mean, I'll be truthful, if I'd have had to have gone down the route of purchasing it, I most likely would have started from day one, because everyone was putting their codes out, and financially it might have made a bit more sense for me to do that. Because I didn't have to go down that route. I chose to sit back and not do the vlog myself. And it was actually Ginger that not persuaded me, basically said, why aren't you vlogging? Because we'd started talking through the comments, and she's like, go do it, start. And I'm like, you know what, let's give it a go. And the rest is history, so they say. It's
I
so
think,
I was on week 14 and had to do a bit of a catch up.
do you wish you'd done it from the start though?
Possibly. I mean, yes, it actually doesn't matter to me either way. I think I've been lucky in the fact that it picked up, and I'd already made quite a few connections as well, because like I said, I must have, I don't know, 30 at least channels that I subscribe to, and I always try to interact with everybody. So it's sort of built up a relationship with a few people anyway. So yeah, in hindsight, I could have started earlier, but I don't think it would really have made much of a difference. I think, if new people come on board now, as that are now starting that couple of weeks behind me, and then there's a few people that are a couple of weeks in front, you can pretty much find somebody that is on the same week as you, or as close to it. So, no, I'm glad I started when I did.
Yeah.
But I don't regret not starting earlier.
I think that what's been helpful for me, and I don't know if this has been the same for you, but it's kind of doing the videos has kind of made me think, well, Christ, I need to do this because I need to make a video for this, so I better be sticking to this because I'm meant to be bloody showing how I'm losing and all that. Have you found that it's kind of kept your motivation going or kept you on the narrow with things?
Yes, definitely. I think, I mean, it also has the opposite effect, is that I dread even more getting on that scale on a Sunday morning, because I'm like, I've got to report it.
Please.
I've got to tell the truth. And I've had a few maintains. I've had some very small gains, like 0.2, 0.3. But I've got to be honest, at the end of the day, I can't bluff my way through it. But yeah, it does keep me on the straight and narrow a little bit. But I think it's also made me want to educate myself even more. It makes me want to go out, and just to the fact that I can say whatever I am saying on a Sunday morning is as truthful and as factual as I can possibly make it. So hand on heart, I can say that I've either done it or it's truly what I've researched and believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Joe's just said, Karen, you, Ginger, and Jackie were my first YouTubers I subscribed to. Seeing already the successes that you'd achieved made it easier to step right in. So I think, sometimes it's that sort of motivation you get from other people who are saying, I'm now doing this because of you. That sometimes sort of makes you think, I'm obviously doing a good thing here. I'm actually thinking sometimes it's good to be able to have those weeks where you have either maintained or you've put on weight, because then it creates a whole new feel of like reality to it. Because so far, and I'm sure it will change at some point, I've lost every week. And I feel that sometimes it's a little bit like, would people start going, yeah, right, you've lost every single week, they're almost waiting for that time where actually, and it's going to happen where, yeah, I didn't lose anything this week. In fact, I put on. So actually, maybe for you, having those weeks where you said, oh, it was a small weight gain this week, but do you know what? It was because X, Y, Z happened, and this is life. I mean, that just make people feel, actually, do you know what? You're more real.
You're adhering to my bottle of wine barbecue, aren't you?
I'm not saying the word. You're playing alcoholic. Sorry.
But yeah, real life happens. I mean, I know the statistics around Mounjaro, and the bigger you are, and like any diet, the bigger you are, the more weight you have to lose. Therefore, you will lose big numbers at the beginning if you stick to it.
Yeah.
You'll do that on Weight Watchers, on Slimming World, on any of them. But it's the consistency that has come with Mounjaro, and I think that's been the biggest thing for everybody, is that they are consistently losing every single week, because it helps you to stick to it. Because that one day when you would have, eaten all the pies and had that fall off the wagon, that day would have become a week, become a month, and then I'll start again in January.
Yeah.
And it
absolutely.
stopped that. Because literally every day is a brand new day now. So you can have the odd blip. And it's providing you keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, it will come back round. I think I'm more unique to a lot because I lose a lot slower as well.
You said it, not me. You unique. All right, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, you've got extra things to be sort of thinking about in your situation, and I'm glad you said that, because you went into detail on the video about how you kind of you put on weight at some point. You had obviously an appointment at some point where you then found out that you was diabetic. So type 2. Am I right thinking type 2 diabetic?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. How just as someone who thank touch wood and all that hasn't been diagnosed as diabetic, did it affect you physically at all, the fact that you're diabetic, or even mentally, I suppose, to be told that you are now this?
Yeah, both. I think as most people's history, from teens or early 20s, you're slowly putting on weight year in, year out. Right from, I would say, my mid-20s, I'd go up a couple of pounds and then I'd drop a little bit, and just yo-yoed all the way up until I was 6-7 stone overweight. But when I was actually diagnosed, I'd actually been told a couple of years prior that I was pre-diabetic.
Right.
And just brushed that off completely. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And that's the attitude that the GPs had as well at the time. Whether that changes is different. But the run up to me actually being diagnosed, my sight was really bad. My vision started to go.
Okay.
And I was being extremely thirsty, which I didn't put 2 and 2 together, as you don't. My sweet craving was off the chart, to the point that I wouldn't normally go for sweets, sugary sweets. I was more of a chocolate savoury type person, so crisps, extra sandwiches, anything basically. But I wasn't the one that went for the sugar bonbons. But I was eating packets.
This came on.
Yeah, I was eating packets of sugar, literally on a daily basis. It was very, say, bizarre. Looking back in hindsight, because obviously at the time you sort of don't notice it because you're just doing it. Beginning of lockdown, we were all sitting there with a packet of jelly babies, weren't we? Or 3 or 4. Went for my annual blood test because I had been pre-diabetic, so they just called me in. And they literally set the fire alarms off. It was like, shit. and my readings were ridiculously high.
Yeah.
I went to the opticians as part of the diabetic check, and my vision was really bad, to the point that I'd already got reading glasses at the time, but my prescription had gone sort of maybe twice as worse. But my reading prescription was now my distance prescription as well, that I actually needed them for driving. And that's pretty unheard of. You know, as you age, you tend to get, you know, lesser on your reading, but obviously your distance doesn't tend to be affected very much. Within a couple of months or so of being on the basic medication, and bringing my levels down to something that wasn't horrible, my vision repaired itself. So literally,
Amazing, really, isn't it?
yeah, my next optician's appointment went back to my previous prescription, and I didn't need distance. And even the optician was amazed. But, you know, that's how much the sugar in your system affects your system in general.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, like, that's when I would start to panic, when I'm thinking things like, I can't see properly. When it's something internal, you don't know what's happening and this, that, and the other, you can sort of put it to the back of your mind. But if you've got something that literally is affecting you every second of the day, then that would be the alarm bells for me. Like, I don't want this to disappear.
Yeah, it was something really daft. I mean, we've got a reasonably big TV, and the strap line that you get in front of the news at the bottom, I physically couldn't read it unless I'd got my reading glasses on, and then it was blurry, and I'm like, I shouldn't need my reading glasses to watch the telly from a couple of foot across the room.
No.
So, but touch wood, I've literally just been back to the opticians, and my prescription is as normal. I get a photograph of the back of my eye every year as well. That's
lovely.
Yeah,
this is lovely, marvelous. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, touch wood, everything is going in the right direction now.
Yeah, so praise the Lord. We are back. She has sight. She can see again. Because I would think, and I might be wrong, you can answer this obviously better than me. Does it then, when you sort of be told you're diabetic now, is there a danger then that then becomes like your identity? Because everything's kind of related in some way to your diabetes. So therefore, I'm no longer Karen. I am someone who's diabetic. You know, does that potentially come in?
It does. I mean, I started to think like that. Realistically, especially in the early days, it was a case of, oh, I can't have that, I'm diabetic. Oh, I can't have that, I'm diabetic. And I'm one that I can fall down a rabbit hole looking into anything. I can research sometimes to the detriment. So yeah, I did get a little bit like that at first. But also, this is going to sound horrible, but the GP saw me as the diabetic as opposed to Karen, the person. So when I was going to the GP, it was, or medical professionals in general, it was a case of, oh, you're diabetic. And that's the first thing that they see in that sense.
I can see it almost like, instead of like, how are you, Karen? It's more like, how's the diabetes?
Yeah. What's your diet like?
Fine. What about me? Sort of like, because it affects so many things. And then obviously, anytime you go to eat, you're reminded, I'm diabetic. Anytime you want to drink something, I'm diabetic, So I can imagine.
Exactly the same way as we are when we're overweight. I don't know about everybody else, but I went through phases of being very, very conscious about everything I was eating, especially if I was eating out. Why is that fat person eating a salad? Surely she wants a burger. Oh yeah, I do want a burger, but I'm not going to eat it in public because I should be eating a salad.
Because also, if you think you have something that you do want, then it's oh, look at that fat person stuffing their face with this, that, and the other. So you can't win in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very much like that, more internally, but as a diabetic. Because I wanted the chocolate pudding dessert because I hadn't actually had a dessert for months and months, whatever it was. But that one I couldn't have because I was in public, and my internal me was going, no, you can't have it. But thankfully things have changed.
Well, we've got some very nice comments about your cocktails that you had on holiday. That seems to be getting a lot of good buzz. Joe has said, I remember you telling us about your blood sugar levels, and I thought this is the highest level I've ever heard. So that just goes to show how high those levels were. And also that finding out about your eyes, your opticians recently, must have been a huge sigh of relief. That's what Joe said. So absolutely, because your vision's so important, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's the one thing obviously I know about now, but it wasn't the one thing that I even considered beforehand. You know, my ex-father-in-law, bless him, passed a long time ago, but he was type 1 diabetic, so he'd had diabetes all his life.
Yeah.
And you know, nearer the end, he'd had both legs amputated. He was in a chair. I mean, this guy got around all the time. I mean, he was still driving. You know, just everything got adapted. But eventually, the diabetes killed him.
Yeah.
But because, I mean, if he was alive now, he'd be well into his 80s, I think. So, but at the time, it just wasn't diagnosed correctly, and then it wasn't treated properly. And obviously, medication has come so much further now.
Oh God,
that,
yeah.
That maybe he wouldn't, you know, if he'd have been diagnosed today, he'd have a few more years left in him. So I was aware of diabetes, but I wasn't really aware of the difference between type 1 and type 2. But I knew what it could do to you.
I was going to say, my Christ, when you're then told that, I suppose you're then having flashbacks to what you saw, and then you're thinking, oh Christ, this is going to happen to me.
Yeah, quite possibly, if I don't do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always keen to kind of find out how a person gets to the point where they're overweight and so on, because it happens for people for different reasons. So what was, before obviously you made changes to your life and everything like that, what was your relationship with food? Why was it food that allowed you to get to where you got to?
I would say a few things. I don't think there's ever one thing that causes it for anybody. You know, I've got the typical story of grew up in not necessarily poverty, but in a very challenging household. And it was a case of you ate everything on your plate. You did not waste food.
Because if not, you're going to get nothing else. Yeah.
Exactly. So no pudding. You couldn't go out with your mates. I mean, it's amazing how quick you can eat your food when your mates are waiting on the doorstep for you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So there was that mentality. But there was also, bless her, my mother wasn't the best cook. Let's put it that way. And our evening meals consisted of sausage and chips, egg and chips, chips and beans, chips and chips. She loved that bloody chip pan. She loved that bloody chip pan. So we didn't.
You know, oven like oil, chip fat.
Oh yeah, no lard. It was hard.
Yeah, lard.
You used to put the burner on and melt the chip fat.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, step aside away from all the healthy eating stuff and all that. Those are the best chips. Those are the best chips. You don't lard. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And to bulk out every meal, if that wasn't as bad, we had bread and butter with everything.
Yeah.
No, so every single meal had at least a piece of bread and butter. I always remember getting meals together. I mean, we were a family that always ate together. We, we always sat around the table at dinner time and we all ate together at 6 o'clock. But one of my jobs running up to dinner would have been doing the bread and butter. Regardless of what the meal was, pie and chips, bread and butter. So everything got bulked out with now what we know is not the best food.
No, but I guess if you think about it, when you haven't got much money, you get a sack of potatoes. That'll last you however long. Bread, you get your bread, stuff like that. And as long as you're being fed, that's all there's something to worry about. Yeah.
And I was a skinny child, right up until like 17, 18. I was a typical skinny child. So yeah, I think that most likely set the foundations. I'm definitely an emotional eater. I'll eat when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm tired. If I'm tired, I eat double.
Oh.
Yeah, if I'm tired, I'm definitely starch. It doesn't matter. And like I said, chip butties. That's got to be the best.
The combination
That is
of the two
ambrosia.
come together, yeah.
And so it just slowly started piling up. And every time I got to a milestone going up, I'd be like, yeah, the diet's starting. I'm never going to be 10 stone again.
Monday
I've,
it is.
got to get under it. Next thing I know, I'm 11 stone. And, and it just snowballs as it always does. I did lose, I think 2012 was some bizarre reason.
Yes, I was going to ask you about this because I saw that you had quite a successful sort of weight loss period in 2012. And before I ask you that, we've had a couple of people. So Jerry said hi. So hi, Jerry. And Vic, hey guys, loving the live. Thank you ever so much. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Now, I'm interested in this because I had a very successful weight loss time, but mine was earlier. So mine was 2007. And I think I lost 4 stone at that point. Okay. And, oh, sorry, Vic, guys, can you quickly remind me how long you've been on Mounjaro and how much you've lost? Oh, okay. All right. Well, so just straight off the bat then. So, yep. So Karen, before I ask you a question, how long?
I've been on just over 6 months now. I started in a very end of November, so I'm most likely coming up to 7 months. I've actually stopped counting. I think it's week 32. It's become such a normality now that I'm not counting the weeks anymore. But prior to that, I had already lost 3 stone myself. So in total, I think £70 down overall, but £30 of that on Mounjaro in 6 months.
And for myself,
which is low compared to some.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still a great deal. And for myself, my last video, so that was the end of week 12. I've lost 4 stone, so 50.5 pounds. But also bearing in mind, Vix, I started off at 30 stone. So like what Karen would have said earlier, it's going to be easier for me to lose big amounts to begin with than say someone like Karen because she's a fair bit smaller than me. Okay, I've pretty much got to lose Karen. Okay, so so that's how far we've been on it. But going back to this sort of this weight loss I had, which was in 2007, it was brilliant, and the only reason that didn't continue was that I had to have an operation, and I found myself bedbound for a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, and then just started eating again, and then it just went all back on again. But the problem was because I'd had that successful time, I would then, whilst I was then big again, I would keep thinking back to then and feel crap about myself because I'm like, I've done it before. Why can't I? And every time I try and do it again, it just wouldn't work. It was almost like that was the golden sweet spot time. And then now that that's gone, and I used to think back to it, and I used to think, oh, why did I carry on eating like that? Did you ever sort of, once you'd had it, then put the weight on again, did you used to keep thinking back to that 2012?
Exactly that. I would even go as far to say as I didn't feel that I'd lost weight until I surpassed what I had in 2012 because I always said, well, I've already been that. I can do that. So I think I'd most likely gone about 3 stone over that when I started again. So I almost had to lose that 3 stone before I felt like I was actually losing weight. So I had to beat my last effort. But both times, and I know I've got Mounjaro on board now. And for the first 3 stone or so that I lost, although I wasn't on Mounjaro, I was on diabetic drugs, which do help. They do help to regulate the sugars, which in turn will help you lose weight. But ultimately, both times I've had to calorie count. It's no fad diet, no restrictions of anything, just pure old-fashioned calorie count. Know what you should be eating and stick to it, and be in a slight deficit. Like I said, like everybody, we've done every single diet out there.
Yeah, you've mentioned Weight Watchers, you've mentioned others as well. Why do you think they didn't work for you?
Well, they did initially. They worked whilst I was on them, Briefly, to be perfectly honest, I think the Slimming World was most likely the worst because we went the chippy on the way back from Slimming World.
Get your bread out again.
Yeah, you just starved all day Monday so that the scale at least didn't go up, and then you just went the chippy on the way home. The culture of slimming groups in general just doesn't
work.
work.
Did the chips fall under the red or the green? Where did it fall in the Slimming World sort of criteria?
But not with bread and butter.
No.
You could have Slimming World chips that you could stick a potato in the oven and spray a bit of fry light over them. And no, it's like any fad diet. Realistically, it will work whilst you're sticking to it.
Yeah.
Slim Fast was most likely my favourite. I loved coffee Slim Fasts, but I also, and I think this comes from like a punishment side almost. I had to feel hungry. I had to feel like I was punishing myself and almost starving myself to feel like I was putting some effort into losing weight.
Is that why some people find Mounjaro difficult? Because you're never really feeling hungry. Not like you would do when you're on a traditional diet.
Yeah, although I would say I was like that at the beginning, but now I'm not. I eat 3 solid meals, I get hungry, and I'm hungry for my food. Chip butty. I can only do half a chip butty now.
Yeah. So,
that's the problem.
I'm going to have half of this. I can't be doing it. Just half a stick of lard. I'll be all right. So.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like I can eat good meals, just very smaller portions of them. I know what to put on my plate, and I can finish my plate because I've put smaller amounts on there. And I think hopefully, touch wood, that's the difference on this one, and that's why it's going to be sustainable going forward.
We've had some comments. So Joe has said that she's 2 pounds less weight loss than myself, but she's a big girl. She says, Sandra, hello, lovely people. Listening is on, and Andy, hello, double D's. I think you're referring to me and my fashion show from the last video. Is this going to be one of your main double D's? Mine are bigger than yours, Karen. So, yeah, I mean, just to touch upon Joe's point there, I know I've said it in a previous video, the bigger you are, the more you're able to lose. And I always go back to my 600-pound life because that's something I have watched quite a lot. And he's quite happy to say to them in a month or two, I want you to lose 50 pounds. Well, if you said that to someone who's not particularly overweight, they'd be like, yeah, right, give over. But they are able to do it because they're that much bigger. So that's why we're able to lose more. When I eventually get to a point where I'm a lot smaller, then we're going to be talking about much smaller amounts, which is what it is.
I think instead of using how many pounds you've lost, I think it's a better option to be looking at how much percentage you've lost.
Yes. Yeah.
Because your 5%, your 5%, maybe X amount of pounds. My 5% is going to be a lot less, but it's still we've lost 5% of our body weight.
Absolutely.
And I think as much as I do transfix on the number, I'm also, I've got the Shotzi app, and I know that I've lost something like 19% of my body weight since being on Mounjaro. So absolutely. I look at it from that point of view, and because I lose a lot less, I will do the maths. I'll watch somebody else and they'll say that they've lost £5 this week. But I can go back to their start weight. I can see what they've lost in total, and I can work out the percentage. And I'm like, you know what? We're not all that different at the end of the day.
And I'll tell you what, Karen, that's why whenever anyone sort of comments and says, oh, I've lost £1 or stuff like that, I'm like, well done. Because at the end of the day, £1 for you is probably a bloody lot. And my other half is Mrs. Chris is also is on Mounjaro as well, but she's a lot smaller than me. So I think sometimes there's been these times where I've come out and I'm like, oh, I've lost £5, and she's lost £1, and there's that element of like, I've only lost £1. But I'm like, but £1 for you is like £5 for me, and I think it's just about keeping that sort of in sort of perspective, really. Oh yes, apparently my video was brilliant, terrifying but brilliant. You thought that was terrifying? I had to record it. You know, just disgusting. My God, the things my phone has seen.
I made him watch it to the end.
Do you know what? If you didn't get nightmares from that, if that's going to stop you from being overweight, then nothing ever will. Okay, but yeah, you touched upon the fact that you obviously had your medication for your diabetes and such. And yes, and my other half had to witness them. One that didn't work for you, and one that I know people do use, is your metformin, and that did not work for you. Now, not that I want you to go into the the details of how it affected you. It really didn't work for you. It made you quite poorly.
Yeah, it worked initially for maybe the first couple of months, and I was on the highest dose because they start you off at like 1 tablet a day, and then it goes up to 2 times a day, and then eventually they double you up to 2 times a day. So I was on the maximum dose, and sort of once it got to maximum dose, it just didn't agree with me, let's put it that way, and it just got worse. They tried moving it around. They tried changing the dosage. They put me onto a slow release version as well, which again worked for a little bit, and then I just became more and more intolerant to it. You know, it is the go-to drug for first diabetes because it's cheap. It's the equivalent of paracetamol. They're like 10p a tablet. Metformin has been around for so many years that there's so many generic versions of it. You know, it's cheap. That, you know, it came out of patents a long time ago. So it's always the first go-to, and that's not just in the NHS. You know, everywhere metformin's I don't want to call it the gold standard anymore because I don't think it suits that, but it's the first option, and for some people it works a treat.
Absolutely fine. Yeah.
I was on a combination of metformin and glycoside, and I don't want to go into all the details of it. Glycoside does one thing, pushes your sugar into you, and metformin basically tries to take it out. So they sort of counteract each other. But glycoside makes you put on weight, and metformin makes you shit yourself. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a pleasant couple of years.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I sort of mentioned about the whole it affecting you mentally, because not only have you just been told that you're now diabetic, okay, which in itself is news that you don't particularly want to hear. You're then on some medication for it, and now you're starting to feel worse than you did before. It must be a lot to take on.
I honestly thought at that point, well, this is just you now. You've got yourself into this. You know, you've got to control your blood sugar as much as you possibly can. And if you've got side effects, you're just going to have to suck it up. And for a long time, I persisted with really bad side effects because I didn't know any better, and I didn't advocate for myself at the time. So I just educated myself, started to look to see what was out there and what I could take. Thankfully, we got a new practice nurse, a diabetic nurse within our surgery, and she was a lot more up on the newer medications. And the minute I mentioned it to her, she was like, right, we'll stop. You don't need to take that. We'll stop. We'll try you on something else. So, you know, at least she was able to not make me suffer anymore.
And if you didn't have her, then you could have just been carrying on with it.
Yeah, quite possibly. But, you know, touch wood, thankfully that's happened. But I do think, you know, the one thing I say to anybody, diabetic or not, you know, advocate for yourself. Do your research, and honestly, I'm lucky. I'm quite science orientated. I've got a bit of a science brain, so I'm happy to go and research things. But I do understand that a lot of people look at any form of research and it just goes over their head. They're not going to get it. But stick a few things into AI now, and it will give it you in plain language. You know, it's you need to educate yourself.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's always, instead of just like going along with things willingly and just going, oh, I'm sure it's fine, you know, look into it. And that's kind of taken me nicely into something else, because you've been very much into your exercise, your videos. When you're going into different things, you're going into a lot of in-depth things. And I remember your video you did that was all about the different clicks of the Mounjaro pen and things like that, and a very scientific sort of side of it. Is that for you, or are you wanting to sort of pass that on to everybody else as like a piece of useful information?
A little bit of both, but also I get a bee in my bonnet over misinformation, and I'd seen quite a few that were either sort of touching on it and brushing it over, and then you read everyone's comments and people going, well, how many clicks to do this? You know, how does it work? But that person has not explained how it works. And I've always been an advocate for, if you understand something, truly understand why it happens, where it works, everything else, you can make your own decisions instead of just going, well, Karen does 30 clicks, so I'll do it.
That's without fine, knowing why. It might not work for you.
Exactly. Well, there's that, and plus that's how mistakes get made. You know, that's why you do get stupid people in A&E, because they've taken the whole pen, because they don't know the difference between milliliters and milligrams. You know,
but you're always going to get that. You will always get that. My eye hurts. Why does it hurt? Well, I stuck my Mounjaro pen in my eye and now it hurts. Well, there you go. What do you expect?
I actually joked at one point about sticking it in your eyeball, because it doesn't matter where you inject, really, as long as it's subcutaneously. And as I said it, I'm like, no, you can't say that, because some sod will go and stick it in their eyeball.
Yeah, Callum said, stick it in your eye, and I did, and it hurt. You know, this is why they have things like on packets of glue and all that, do not eat and all that and sort of thing. You know, unfortunately. Right, we've had a bit of an influx of messages. So Andy is very keen to know if you've had your Asda chicken sticks yet. Have you had your Asda chicken sticks yet?
Yes, I have.
There you go.
Those are my gym snacks when I come back from the gym. It's quick tea, 10 minutes in the air fryer, and it feeds both of us without having to wait around for dinner. So, and I would recommend them to anyone. And you don't just get them at Asda.
Absolutely. Make sure you get your bread and butter with it as well. That's what you want. So he also says, well done, Karen, on reaching your 1,000 subscribers. Yeah. 1,000 subscribers, you.
Finally.
Absolutely. Sandra, bless her, says, also been on metformin for PCOS, opposite to Mounjaro, and I'll stop there. So quite a few visits to the great white god in the bathroom, I believe. So yeah, God, do you know what? At times, though, I'd kill for that at the moment, to be honest. God, I'm like, you know, I just sit there and I'm like, please do something. I can't do something. Yeah,
but yeah, that's I mean, PCOS is a big one. It's, you know, metformin helps because most people with PCOS have a lot of insulin resistance. They may not have diabetes. They may develop it later, but you know, the screw up with the hormones and everything else that goes with it. And they usually end up with some form of insulin resistance, and hence why the metformin helps. So although, again, a diabetic drug is used for a lot of other things as well. But, you know, and a lot of it's anecdotal at the moment, especially with Mounjaro, because it's not being tested in trials for things like PCSO. But everybody that is on it will report that it's improving something and rebalancing hormones. Honestly, I do believe it's a wonder drug. And just watch this space, because it's just started. Retatrutide will be out. Yeah, retatrutide will be out in the States most likely by the end of this year. And then that's it. There's like 10 behind it, all ready to come through.
Let us not forget, folks, Viagra was originally for heart complaints, wasn't it? So,
exactly.
You know, it also does this as well. Okay.
Who reported that side effect first to their doctor?
Doctor, my heart's not so great, but I'll tell you what, I've got a massive stonk on for the last 4 hours and I can't get rid of it. It's affecting my heart. So just to sort of touch upon something you brought up there. So, annoyance at misinformation. Okay. What I've noticed, and even just the short time I've been on YouTube, there has been an absolute flourish of new channels and new videos of people coming on with their own journeys, and which I think is good, you know, because it's building a community. As I've always said, we, apart from a certain jab we all had to have a few years ago, we are the biggest test subject basically of this drug, because they've not really, because they're all finding out new things from it. So actually, we're all kind of reporting with each other about how we're finding it, what's worked, what isn't, and that. What's been your sort of like feelings about with like all this new information and new channels and all that? Has there been anything that's kind of worried you or annoyed you?
Not so much worried, but I do think, I mean, as we were, 6 months ago, I wouldn't say completely green, but I've learned a hell of a lot in the 6 months that I've been taking it. I did do my research prior, but the one thing that I did do before jumping on YouTube was I did the typical Facebook searches.
Yeah.
And joined a couple of Facebook groups. And very, very quickly, they turned toxic. There was so much misinformation going around. From, this stuff will make you grow a second head, to, it's not being tested, and to the point that you're taking it off diabetics, which was another argument that was flying around at the time.
Right.
To the other ones that people just didn't, they were saying, "Oh, I'm on 5 milliliters." No, you're not. You're on 5 milligrams.
Can you imagine?
Just silly little things like that.
Yeah.
That are harmless mistakes. They're not people purposely doing that. They're harmless mistakes when they think they are being helpful, when in fact it can be really dangerous. So I'm very aware when I do mine that if I am giving out any form of technical information, that I am absolutely 100%, the old caveat that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Else. None of us are ever claim that we are, I don't think.
But do you think that there's kind of like, there's people out there who are potentially leaning towards that and sort of making out that they are kind of more of a...
In both ways, I think you've got people that are sort of saying, "Oh, I've been doing it for 6 months. I've lost X amount. Do what I do." And hopefully that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, this is how I've done it. Maybe you can take something from it. However, find your own journey.
Yeah.
But also I think there are some medical people on that are very good at not giving advice. They will purposely say, I'm not going to give out any advice apart from stick to what the manufacturers say that you should be doing.
Absolutely.
Because they can't afford to get into that trap of saying, maybe try this or maybe try that. Like I said, we are all learning. It's not a new drug in the sense that, it's been used for 20 years. This is just the new version of it. But like I said, it is becoming to be used for so many more things now. Absolutely. And people are reporting improvements with a lot of other things. So, like I said, I just think this is going to go through the roof over the next few years. It's just going to get better. I can't honestly see this crashing.
Do you feel that, much like your kind of Facebook forums or groups and all that, that there's a potential for that toxicity to blow into here? Because do you think there's maybe some people doing these for all the wrong reasons, potentially?
Oh, yeah, there's bound to be. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, as much as I've just hit my 1,000, which, is fantastic, I do think... Thank you. For me, there's certain YouTubes that you would quite happily pay for, whether that's information from professionals. Literally the other day, I fixed my loo by watching YouTube, because it was a plumber.
What had you done to your loo, Karen? For God's sake.
I'm sorry, but the inlet valve had stuck and I had to take it apart and redo it. But, No, YouTube has got everything on it. It's got information. You want to learn something, you can find a YouTube video on it. And if it means you pay for it slightly in some, you know, even if it's just in advert revenue, then fine. But I do draw the line on people that are just sharing their personal details, their personal vlogs. For me, and a lot of people have said, you know, I started this to have some sort of record and to keep me accountable. That's it. So why on earth would I expect people to pay for it? It just doesn't compute at all for me.
Yeah. I think the thing is that this is dangerous territory anyway, because it's medical.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I wouldn't want to put myself in a position where I'm like, because people are quick to sue and everything like that. So you've got to be so bloody careful with these things.
Yeah, definitely. Which is why, you know, going back to the click video, when I you know, I put the mathematical equations there, work it out for yourself, understand it and understand why you're doing it. And then you can make informed decisions, not just blindly into so-and-so on the internet says it must be true. Because there'll be 3 other people that will disagree with that person. I'm the sort of person that will watch something will tick and I'll think, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll go down that rabbit hole and I will research it to the death. Now, that could just be watching other YouTubers, but I will get a varied opinion and then make my own decision. But I'm very aware that people will see one piece of information and go, well, that must be true. And
I think that was one of the reasons why I did Mounjaro in the first place, is because I looked into it. I heard people's experiences with it, positive, negative, and from that I then decided, yeah, there's more positive than negative than what I've seen so far. I have weighed it up. That's why I was going to do it. But yeah, I do worry that there's going to be kind of because it's quite a nice community, to be fair, on there. If there is such a thing as a nice community on YouTube, this is one of them. Okay. I do wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a let's move away from the community side of it and let's move into the business side of it, you know. And I just think, well, what's been quite nice is everyone being authentic and everyone saying to everyone, this is my journey, this is how I got on this week, had a bit of a shit week, but there we go, blah, blah, blah. Next week, oh no, not so bad this week, this is what I've been up to. But yeah, you know, it's a little bit worrying for me because it is such a nice you know community to have on here, because like I said, we've all got that shared experience, even whether it's diabetic or because of weight loss or anything like that. But it is a concern for me, and I guess that's why I want to know, what are you kind of hoping to get from, well, what are you hoping people get from your videos?
Oh, the same that I get from everybody else's. I'm a nosy bugger. I like to know what other people are up to. You know, it's that interaction. It's not even about the number. You know, I'm not one of. There's quite a few people, you and me, the same, that will say, right, this is the bit you're waiting for. Here's my numbers. Well, you do that, don't you? And put it in. It's terrible. I'm not there for the numbers. I'm there for the other stuff. So, you know, what have you been up to this week? You know, what have you found is working? You know, have you been to the gym? Have you done what you said you were going to do last week? You know, so I'm almost going to hold people accountable to that. Not that I will put it in writing to them, but yeah. So I'm just nosy. I'm a people person. So you know, I'm the one that sits on people watches, because I'll make my own stories up. It's I'm not there just to say, oh, you only lost £1 this week. Terrible. It's obviously not working.
I think that people are like an authenticity. They like authentic people. Okay. And I think people get that from yours. Again, we've got a fair few comments that come through. Loved your GLP-1 research videos, Chris. Thank you, Joe. Andy says, I love these chats, by the way. Better than anything on the TV. And do you know what's better, Andy? You don't have to have a TV license for this either, so even better. Judy Beck says, hi Judy. A question for you both. Is there a food that used to regularly be on your menu choices, but now you just don't fancy it as much? Karen, over to you.
You're going to go bread and butter there, aren't you?
Wrapping.
I would say sweet in general. So anything. I did have cake when I was on holiday, but that was more of a treat. But yeah, I just don't. The best thing that has happened for me is the food noise going off. So mine has been my evening snacking. So we've got a snack box in the top of the cupboard that every week gets filled up with crisps and biscuits and chocolate and everything else. And by Thursday, it's all gone. Now, I mean, it's pretty empty now because no one has anything out of it now, because that's the thing that used to be on my menu that is no more. But I haven't actually gone off any food in that sense.
Yeah, I don't think I've necessarily gone off anything. I just felt like maybe I didn't. Whereas I might have had a meal that consisted of 3 or 4 items, it might now only be 2. Have I had anything that I don't have anymore? I always used to be a carb fiend, you know, so crisps, pasta, that sort of thing. I still have them, but maybe not to the limit that I have. And I don't now sit there and go, oh, I could kill some crisps, or I could kill for this, that, and the other. I don't have that as much anymore. I'm not saying I won't, but speaking of
I don't even think it anymore. That's the main thing, is that, you know, we could have crisps up in the cupboard. I actually don't know if we do, and I don't care. It's just not on my radar.
You're going to go look to see if you have got any. Have a bread and butter.
I mean, we usually do, because I still buy shopping with my son in mind as well. So, you know, the chocolate biscuits, Joe, I'm sorry, yes, and they've now gone.
They've all gone. No chocolate biscuit. Not since she's broken the toilet. She can't have them anymore. Speaking of food, though, you have your food haul videos that you do, which I particularly like. So I like seeing the things that you pick up, and obviously it's been picked up about your chicken skewer things and whatnot. So, it sounds like a stupid question to ask, but what is the aim of those videos for you to do those?
Oh, a little bit of everything. I mean, it was something that wasn't even on my record on my radar at one point. But a couple of other vloggers that I'd been watching were doing food hauls as well, and I'm like, and I was interested in what they were buying, so I'm like, maybe it could. And at that point, I was also thinking, you know, how do I bulk out my videos? If I'm perfectly honest, you know, you don't really need to listen to me talking, which I can do for an hour at a time. But it was a little bit of everything, you know. How can I make the videos a little interesting? Same with me trying to put a little bit of gym stuff in there just to mix it up slightly. But it was just something that I really enjoyed watching myself. I watch Marcia, Lady Marmo. I can't remember how she pronounces it now, but she does a food haul, you know, pretty much every week. You know, and some people do their food top-up shops as well in the middle of the week. So, and I just found it interesting. It gave me ideas, gave me products that maybe I wouldn't have thought out beforehand. And so hopefully, like those chicken skewers, you know, I really do think that they're absolutely brilliant. So everyone go out and buy chicken skewers but you get them everywhere now. And I actually avoided them for a long time. I avoided them because of the marketing. You know, they were marketed as high protein. They're shit, Sherlock. They're chicken.
It's meat. What do you get out of it? You know, if you're not getting protein from your meat, I'll be worried. So I'll tell you what I like. There's Donna in America who I watch, who does her food haul. But because it's America, I then watch them and I go, oh, why don't we have that? Oh, I'd like that. Oh, why don't we have that? Because they have completely different stuff to what we have.
Do you know what I'm really impressed with the American ones as well? Is every single packet has the same food description, calorie content thing. What do they call that?
Macros. So like it's like nutritional information.
Yeah, the nutritional stuff. But it's completely standardized. Every single one is exactly the same. It will say how much per 100 grams or per item that thing is. As you have to read an essay and have a science degree to understand them. Some are getting better.
Yeah.
But again, it's what I came to earlier. It's like, I have a scientific brain. I'm happy to work out what calories are and kilojoules per 100 grams. But I understand that a lot of people can't do that. You know, all you want to do is hold the thing up and go, this is going to be 100 grams. That's all you need. So,
it's almost like they don't want you to know what you're having. So, Claire, testing sobriety, Mounjaro UK. Hello, I've gone off eggs. So annoying, and also only now have one coffee a day when it used to be about 5. Yeah, but the thing is, right, your coffee is about that big now, and it's out of a jug instead of having the 5 individual ones. Eggs is an interesting one. Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I don't think I've gone off anything. We sort of went through a phase that we haven't had brown rice for a while because everything came with brown rice. I quite like brown rice, but I think that was more my son that had gone off it, so we sort of swerved it a bit. We're now doing potatoes a bit more, but we will go back to the brown rice.
Joe says, I find grocery shopping hauls absolutely fascinating. I loved Karen's. Andy says, yeah, right, those 4 cans of lager are not for your son. Yeah. What do you think of the little drinks container there? It's actually smashed at the minute. Joe says, I hate the products that claim to be high in protein, but the 3 times the carbs with hidden sugars and sweeteners. Yes, we all know that. Another guitar player, brown rice is boring as shit. So there you go. So now you know. And then Joe says to Claire, I found a new love for egg and cress salad. Ooh, there we go.
Nice.
So, yeah, don't want to be around that toilet. Bloody hell, that's going to be awful. Obviously, you've mentioned that obviously in your videos that because of the diabetes and such, you've been able to get your prescription, well, on prescription basis, your Mounjaro. Obviously, been NHS updates recently where they're starting to roll it out into new sort of groupings of people. What's your thoughts on all the sort of the updates that they're now been doing?
It's a start, but it's like I said earlier. I really do think that we're at the beginning of it at the moment. With the new drugs that are coming out that are already in testing, with the fact that patents run out on semaglutide and tirzepatide a few years later, I think it's 2030, semaglutide runs out. These drugs will just get better. And I mean, we're pretty much, most of us are all on Mounjaro, so we're on tirzepatide. If somebody had offered you a Zempic, so semaglutide, 2 years ago, you'd have took their hand off for it. Yes. And now, it's no, I don't want semaglutide, I want tirzepatide, I want the new one. So my brain goes, why isn't NHS putting out semaglutide? It's cheaper. It's already massively available because no one wants it anymore because there's a better version. But it's still bloody good. It's still a starting point. No, but I know people are going to have to be patient. I would love it to roll out to everybody tomorrow. Absolutely. You know, not every diabetic's getting it at the moment. Never mind.
No, I did read about that. I did read that there's been some places where there's been difficulties with that being prescribed as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to my GP, they basically said right at the very beginning they couldn't prescribe it for me. It had to be cleared by the diabetic clinic. So the hospital had to okay it, which thankfully they did very quickly. So my GP now prescribes it. But then I've got friends in real life that have gone to their GP and the GP's gone, no, too expensive. I'm like,
yeah, because it's coming out of your pocket, isn't it, mate? You
know. But they've just dismissed it there and then. They've not even looked at the guidelines, you know, and as to how they can get it prescribed. They've just gone, no, it's too expensive.
Personal choice then, do you think, maybe from the doctor?
I think like most GPs, unfortunately, they don't know everything about everything. You know, they can't. They're human beings at the end of the day. And that's why, again, I come back to advocate for yourself, because I went in knowing the guidelines, knowing exactly what they could and what they couldn't. There is still a postcode lottery in some NHS areas, but on the whole, it's a third line medication for diabetics. So you've had to have tried 2 other things, and them either not working, like metformin wasn't for me, or it's not bringing your numbers down enough. And as a third resort, they can then prescribe Mounjaro. Different rules, different areas, but it can still be done. And I think it's the same. It's, you know, it's going to roll out slowly, but it will gain momentum. And as it gets cheaper, you know, I don't have a problem with somebody that's got £10 to lose being on it. I really don't. I think it needs to be, you know, we've got to be careful because there's people out there that buy diet pills online. You know, there's people that will take all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
You know, that's got to be monitored. But we had that problem before Mounjaro.
Well, I'm just thinking, we've got people who are buying Mounjaro pens off Facebook Marketplace, and I'm like, are you mad?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
But because they can't get it anywhere, and that's the thing, it's like, if you could get it legally, properly, at a reasonable price, then people wouldn't be buying the black market shit and doing all sorts to themselves. You know, unfortunately, it's inevitable. Like I said, you know, young girls have been buying diet pills for decades.
Yeah.
We could never manage that because it will always happen. But, you know, in 5 years' time, once the right people have been on it that need to be on it, if I could have got this when I only had £10 to lose in my mid-20s, I would never have become obese and I would never become diabetic. And that would have been 30 years ago. So that's the way I look at it. You know, people who are £10 overweight will most likely in 30 years' time be £50 overweight.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Rachel Hillier says, I get it through NHS, through endocrinology, diabetic, and lots of other conditions. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think I've in ever point have said someone shouldn't get it on the NHS because there's so many things that it can help with.
Yeah.
Joe says, hi, Rachel. I also heard there were more side effects on the lower dose with Ozempic. I wonder how many of us will move to, oh, here we go,
Retatrutide.
Retatrutide, there we go. A bit like Ratatouille when it comes out. Can't believe there's 2 Hilliers on here. What are the chances? You've got Andy and Rachel. There we go. Oh, family reunions going on here. Yeah, so because this is where I always bring them up because this is part of my live show that when I do it, what I always refer to as the moaning media. Okay, because in my point of view, you've got something here. Which actually, to be fair, I'm very surprised that there aren't more agencies or governments coming to people like us saying, how are you getting on with it? Have you had side effects? Because we are a big testing sort of like subject group of to sort of say, how are you getting on with it? You know, I know they have to do their own research and stuff like that. But here is something which, yes, you've got the initial outlay of having to pay for giving people Mounjaro. But in retrospect, you're then thinking about the money you're saving. A bit like, you know, they give people patches, don't they, to stop them smoking because you've got the cost of the patches, but against the cost of things to do with smoking, you know, it's saving the money. And you've got something here which, as you've rightly said, it's pretty much becoming almost titled a wonder drug because it's helping with other things. And yet the media seem hell-bent on making out that this is devil's work, that, you know, you are all going to die. You know, we've had 5 people die so far, right?
Yeah.
You know, so what's your kind of take on how the media are portraying this? I mean, I know it's probably not a surprise, but what have you sort of noticed, and what's your sort of take on it?
I mean, you know, sensible head. I know how the media works. At the end of the day, it's clickbait. It's there to get people to react. That's what sells. You know, it's the same as sticking half-naked women in the middle pages, and
It's
the same. It's sensationalism. But what I wish they would caveat it with is, yes, 5 people have died whilst on Mounjaro, not actually because of Mounjaro.
Yes.
Let's take pancreatitis, because I know that hit the headlines like a few days ago. How many people die from pancreatitis on a daily frigging basis that are not on Mounjaro? Pancreatitis is caused by, in general, gallstones, throwing out shit, and just losing weight can cause that. And that's what they don't caveat it with. It's always down to Mounjaro. It's always a Mounjaro's fault. You know, doesn't tell them that they were on metformin.
And they may have had other conditions or anything like that was going on at the time anyway.
Exactly.
A bit like when there was a big thing that I mentioned on one of my lives about woman got pregnant despite being on contraception, and it was because of Mounjaro. Well, no shit. If you look at the warning thing, it tells you on there. And as Andy's just said, did you see the Vanessa thing with the Strictly bloke? He was annoying, and the doctor put him straight. I haven't seen that. So what happened? I
honestly wanted to kiss that doctor through the screen. Basically, it's I can't even remember what his bloody name was. Anyway, irrelevant. He was basically going down the route as well. When I put on weight, I just picked myself up, made myself go to the gym, got some exercise in, and ate properly. Good for you.
Good for you.
And this female doctor came on afterwards, and she literally tore him a new one. She went, firstly, it's a disease, and she just rattled through everything, you know, all the stuff that we already know. And he went, no, okay. And then he'd caveated it with, I don't have a problem with people being on it.
Oh, no. It's so much so that you've appeared on a TV show to do it. So, yeah.
But if you get a chance, I mean, I can't stand Vanessa Phelps at the best of times, but I do dip into those ones occasionally because she's obviously, she's an advocate for it. However, she will put both sides. She will say, oh, what about pancreatitis?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But how many times has this kind of married up where people just sort of go, well, why don't they just eat less and just move more?
Yeah.
Oh shit! What did we? You know, I didn't know that. You know, and also, why is someone from Strictly speaking on it? I mean, was this voice of authority?
I was telling my son about it this afternoon at lunchtime. Exactly that clip, and I actually said to him, I says, he's a professional dancer who has the mentality of an athlete.
Yeah, you know, and they're moving all the time. You know.
I'm sorry if I'm going to offend anyone, but Wayne Rooney's put on some timber. You know, why doesn't he just get up and move a bit more instead of shoving the pies in?
Absolutely.
You know, athletes keep their weight down usually by training, but how many athletes have you seen after they've given up and retired that have become slightly bigger? There's a boxer, Mike, tell me who the boxer is, but there's one boxer that literally used to always put on about 30 pounds straight after the fight. He'd just eat ice cream for 3 days.
Is this not MMA? Is this not Paddy Pimblett?
No, this is the traditional boxer.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I know Paddy Pimblett, who's into MMA. As soon as he's had his fight, even when he's then doing his news press conference afterwards, he's eating pizza because he's just like
Ricky Hatton.
Oh, Ricky Hatton. There we go, Ricky Hatton. Absolutely, because the sooner the training's gone out of the way, what they want to do then comes in. You know, so but for someone for Strictly to come like, okay, well, wait until you can't dance anymore. Okay, you've got arthritis or whatever like that, you can't do it anymore. Let's see how well I just go into the gym and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. And Tyson Fury's another one. He's been known to up and down and all that. I think it's genetic. I think there's something to it as well, you know. But I think what's amazing about this is that people are now starting to read the things in the media and just sort of going, yeah, okay. So this is the media where you're saying about Mounjaro, but you've also got adverts for booze and everything else like that. You know, so you could just see. I think people have just got to do their own research, move away, listen to people who you see on YouTube who are telling you their week by week, and make your own bloody mind up. That's what I did, you know.
Yeah.
I think the difference with the way I've done it with my videos to someone like yourself is that I've taken the decision mentally to not go down the instructional side of things, because I think because there's far too many people now, including yourself, who are far better than me at going into the ins and outs of this, that, and the other. So I'd be kind of just in the background going, yeah, like that. Whereas you're the ones that are giving all the really good information, which is why I've gone more for the comedy side of things, because if you're having a bit of a crap day or something like that, and because you're on Mounjaro and something that I don't feel right and all that, they've got something you can laugh about at the end of the day. Because I'd much rather people like yourselves and all that go out there and push the information out, because you're doing a much better job than I could ever do. So I think that's an amazing thing for you to do for people.
But I'm very aware that I'm walking a tightrope. I don't push it over to this is what you need to do. I try to give the information completely neutral and not a recommendation.
Yeah,
and I think that's difficult to do. That's especially if it's something that I believe in as well. I don't know, things like split dosing or short dosing or whatever anyone wants to call it. But I also know it's tricky. And if you don't understand it, you can make some quite dangerous mistakes. So it's a very fine tightrope, which I try not to step over. And hopefully I haven't.
No.
But, and I'm quite happy for someone to pull me up in the comments if I'm wrong. And I will always invite people to do that. But so far, touch wood, I don't think I've got anything wrong in that sense.
No. Karen, as I always do with everyone, I have what we refer to as the Fantastic Four. Okay, so my Fantastic Four questions. So yours is a little bit different, obviously, with the diabetic side of things. So what would you say has been your best non-scale victory so far in your journey that's personal to you?
It's twofold. I'd be stupid if I was to ignore the fact that I put my diabetes into remission. Then that my health has to come first, and other health markers as well. So like my blood pressure's come down, my cholesterol's pretty even now as well. So there's other things that have come down with it as well, and that's not necessarily just Mounjaro, but that's just weight loss in general. From a weight loss aspect, I think for me is getting back in the gym. I think that's the one thing that I've wanted to do for quite a while, and made excuses and not gone or whatever. I didn't want to be the fat person in there, which is wrong because I just didn't want to be.
That's why you're there, isn't it? To sort of try and help yourself out, isn't it? So that's what you should think about.
Exactly. And like I said, I wouldn't dare look at somebody that had got a chunk to lose on the treadmill, sweating buckets. I'm like, good for you, good on you.
You're doing something about it.
I didn't have that in me to come at that point. But once I got down to a size that I was beginning to feel a little bit more comfortable, then I went for it. It was like, no, I need to start building some strength and taking my journey into the next level. So I think the big non-scales, but tying my own shoelaces has always been a bonus.
Excellent. Reaching down for your bread and butter from the floor. There you go. You can reach. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I can pick it up when it falls now.
There we go. Thing that surprised you the most when you started Mounjaro?
That it worked.
Straight away, or did it take a while?
I would say I didn't feel suppression straight away, but I definitely just stopped eating the volume pretty much straight away. I think I'd taken it, I don't know, the lunchtime-ish, and by the time I got round to my evening meal, I could only eat half of what my normal one was. Although I didn't feel like my suppression had kicked in, it just stopped the volume.
Which is
and it's been pretty much... just the fact that it actually worked as much as I believed it would, and I'd watched so many people that it's worked. To actually have it happen for yourself is pretty miraculous. Yeah.
Would you say you're at where you want to be, or are you still looking to lose more?
No, I'm in a bit of a crossroads at the moment. I'm not where I want to be. I most likely still have about another 20 pounds to lose. but I've got to that stage of diet fatigue. And I think my body's got to the stage of diet fatigue as well. So my weight loss is ridiculously slow anyway, but for other factors. But I'm going more towards maintenance calories, and trying to really get the gym going a bit more.
Because the question really is normally what I ask is what you do first when you reach the weight you want to be. But have you maybe already done something that you want to do, or have you still got something in mind that you want to work towards?
I just think it's very general, I suppose. It is literally just living my life the way I'm supposed to be. And hopefully seeing out an extra few years. I don't, there's not a particular thing that I want to do. Not that I'm aware of, not yet anyway, because I'm sure I can find something. Got to book my next holiday yet as well.
Yeah, no, drinking holiday, there we go. So
absolutely.
Your last question is just, again, the same that I ask everybody, what's your message for people who might be considering Mounjaro at the moment?
There's only so long that you can consider it for. Listen to the voice in the back of your head, because realistically, I think I've always had an attitude of, if you're umming and ahhing about something, I just ask myself the simple question: if somebody offered it you now, handed it to you, would you say yes? Would you take it there and then? And 9 times out of 10, you've already made that. 9 times out of 10, you've already made that. You've already know that you would. However, you don't want to go to the process of doing it. If you've done your research and you're, 80% convinced that it's something to try, no one's ever going to be 100%, then you give it a go. I honestly don't believe that you've got anything to lose. The scare stories are true, that it's not that these things don't happen. You need to be aware of them. You do need to be aware that if something goes wrong, that you need to know what could go wrong.
But let's also remember, paracetamol comes with guidance and all that as well. So
exactly, if all of a sudden you've got palpitations, read the box and you'll get palpitations just by reading the box. So it's, for me, I would say go for it. Anybody that I speak to, especially in real life, I basically say it's worked for me. If you can get it, like I said, I've got a few diabetic friends that have been trying to get it. But honestly, I don't think you've got anything to lose. And if you think you can't afford it, just work out how many takeaways you've had last month. Tell me then that you can't afford it.
Absolutely.
It's not going to suit everybody. I know that. But there's so many different versions coming down the line over the next few years. There's going to be one for everybody.
Karen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. Thank you so much for coming on and being a guest. For all of those who are watching who haven't seen you before, where can they find you?
Oh, where am I? Karen's Mounjaro GLP Journeys. I will put the link in somewhere.
We've got the links for you anyway. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Karen. She's doing amazing work there, and I get great information from her videos. Obviously, if you are also watching this prior to this happening, then please still comment, still put in your suggestions and things you want to talk about. Thank you everyone who's jumped in on here. Thank you for the fact that we've got 2 Hilliers in the comments box. So we've created weirdness here out of nothing. Karen, thank you ever so much for jumping on. Now, if you also want to be on the particular Tea Time podcast with myself, then please let me know, and also send me an email if you want to, and we can get that hooked up. And please, as I said, make sure that you subscribe to Karen here. Karen, thank you ever so much for Don, and keep up the good job, everyone, because you're all doing fantastic. So keep it on.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.